You're listening to the Untold Italy Travel Podcast, and this is episode number 49.
Ciao and benvenuti to Untold Italy. I'm Josie.
And I'm Katie, and we're here to help you plan your trip to Italy.
Between us, we have many years of travel experience, and we want to help you uncover your own, as yet untold stories and adventures in Italy.
Each episode, you'll hear practical advice, tips and ideas to help you plan your own trips to the magical land of history, stunning landscapes, and a whole lot of pasta.
We'll have interviews from experts and focus on local destinations and frequently asked questions about travel in Italy.
Thanks for listening, and make sure to subscribe to our show.
Now, let's get started on your regular dose of Bella Italia.
Buongiorno, ciao to all our wonderful listeners. It's Katie hosting the show today, and I am so happy to have you here still dreaming of Italy. I know winter in the Northern Hemisphere may be looking a little bleak, but there are sunnier days on the horizon. I can just feel it. Meanwhile, let's stay positive and continue our journeys around Italy, picking up those tips and tidbits of inspiration that add richness and delight to our travels. It's absolutely the best way to spend this season, and that's what we plan to do over the coming weeks. Over on our membership group, Untold Italy Insiders, we've had such a fun month trying Chianti, learning about Pompeii and Rome, and making eggplant parmigiana. A big shout out to all our Untold Italy Insiders members, and especially to Cassie, who shared her delicious version of eggplant parmigiana, which was devoured by her 4 children. You've really got to love it when the kids don't need encouragement to eat vegetables. Coming up next month on Insiders, we're getting a little Christmassy and trying Prosecco, cooking seafood, and learning about Florence, as well as one of Italy's royal palaces, which is in fact the largest in the world and was modelled on the Palace of Versailles in France. So, as you can imagine, it is not plain at all. We'd love you to join us. Just go to untolditaly.com/insiders for all the details of how to sign up at the founding members price, which is valid only until the end of this month, which is November 2020. There are options for monthly and annual membership, so you can choose the one that best suits you. As I said, the price will go up in December, so now's the time to join us at that special price. Now, speaking of Florence, I am so excited to introduce you to this week's guest. One of the many privileges of this job is that I am able to meet some incredibly talented people, many of whom I have an instant connection with. Corinna Cooke is the author of the Glam Italia series of guidebooks, which, in her own words, are the stories and discoveries of a regular person who happens to travel a lot and loves to experience more than just the main tourist attractions. Glam Italia books are a different way of looking at travel from the main style of guidebooks out there. They are really fresh and fun. And now I mentioned to Corinna, and I don't mind sharing with you either, that the success of her writing really gave me the confidence to start out on my own style of writing and this podcast. So she definitely was an inspiration for Untold Italy. Like me, Corinna's love of Italy was sparked by a wonderful teacher, and it has taken her on adventures all over the country, uncovering interesting finds and, of course, eating only the very best gelato. Corinna also runs a boutique small group tours for women in Italy, and I am thrilled to introduce her to you today to talk about Florence, which is the latest in the Glam Italia series. Ciao, Corinna, benvenuta, and welcome to the Untold Italy podcast.
Hi, Katie. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Corinna. I was just telling our listeners in the introduction a little bit about you, and that reading your book, Glam Italia, was one of the inspirations for this podcast. Can you...
Way.
Yeah! It really was.
Oh.
I just liked your writing style, and it's easily accessible, but you pack a lot of punches in terms of the detail, so I really appreciated that. But I wanted to know, can you tell our listeners your story in your own words and how you came to fall in love with Italy and Florence?
Yeah, well, so I grew up in New Zealand, moved to live in London to go to makeup school, and my main career, my whole life has been being a makeup artist. And so I've traveled around the world with that. And when I was living in London, I did my first foray into Europe was a Kentucky tour. And it was, it sounds so funny now, but it was a bus tour full of 18 to 35-year-olds. And it was all like Kiwis and Aussies and South Africans and a couple of Americans and Canadians and people who were young and couldn't have put together a trip like that. And it was fantastic. It was so much fun. And for the longest time, it was actually the best 6 weeks of my life. But we started off, we had the most horrendous crossing across the North Sea, which is just horrible. And we landed in the Netherlands and then went down through France and down through Spain and then back through the Riviera. And everything was good. Like I saw all these great things and really enjoyed it. But then we rolled into Italy and I felt it. It just like everything started thrumming inside of me. And I'm like, what is this place? So incredible. And for the rest of my life, Italy was the place. So I've been to many, 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 many countries, but nothing's ever made me feel the way Italy made me feel. And I've traveled my whole life. And at some point, I just decided, well, I don't really want to invest more time in going and seeing new places. I want to get back into Italy, do a deep dive into it.
I can relate. I can relate. It's such a special place and there's just so many layers to uncover, and I just love hearing the stories about how people have found it, because I think it's very similar to myself. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I had a teacher when I was in school who really unraveled the history for me, and that really grabbed me. And that's why when I started seeing the places that I'd read about, it started building even more interest for me.
Oh, absolutely. And it's great when you can have that one person at some pivotal point in life that changes the course of everything, that introduces you to something that you might have otherwise missed. I mean, I had a high school history of art history teacher, who she had this long red hair that she wore pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore these gypsy skirts that kind of moved when she did. And, she taught history of art and it was great. But when she got on to teaching about the Italian Renaissance art, this thing happened in her. And I could see her this was her great passion in life. And she was so effusive and so dynamic and passionate when she talked about it that it just like washed right over me. And I became equally enthused. And that also propelled me into Italy because I had kind of background, that she was so excited and I was so excited, and I've been around the world to see basically every painting she ever taught me about.
Well, we're going to be talking about Florence today, and it's interesting because my history teacher taught us Renaissance history, and she, at the end of our class, at the end of school, which was our final year of school, we sort of all had such an interest in the Medici, and particularly Cosimo and Lorenzo for some reason, but she well, I'm gonna show, yeah, they are, but she actually did a whole feast for us at her home, and she created all these dishes from the era, and she made us dress up and stuff, and it was just, it was really cool in a nerdy kind of way, but I love that.
Oh, but I love it, and it's important because you've remembered it.
Absolutely. Yes, so many years have passed.
But it's creating experiences and memories, and that's what it's all about.
I think so. They're the things that you hold on to. You may not remember the street that you walked down or, the painting maybe in the Uffizi, but you may remember the experiences that you have.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, Corinna, we covered off the highlights of Florence in an earlier episode of the podcast, but I really wanted to talk to you on the show today because just about those experiences that you can have in this city, because I know that's what you're all about. How can we go about unraveling the essence of Florence, Corinna style?
Corinna style. So what I like to do, I do this for myself, and I do this with anyone who's coming on one of my little tours, is I start off with, let's make a list of 50 things you want to see. And most people off the bat can't come up with 50. So you have to do a little bit of research to start finding things that you might want to add to your list. And we get this nice big long list. And then we do the killer list, which is what are the experiences I want to have? And this is, I think, the most important thing that you do, because I've yet to meet somebody who says, oh, when I dream about Italy, I dream about standing in a long line with the headphones in my ear, watching somebody waving an umbrella and trying to remember if my person's got the orange umbrella today or the blue umbrella today, and, waiting for forever to get in to see something. Nobody dreams that. When you dream about going to Italy, or when you dream about going to Florence, you're probably more thinking in terms of imagining yourself sitting in some beautiful with a glass of wine and some cheeses, or having a cappuccino and a slice of panforte and watching all the people go by. Those are the things that we remember, or being somewhere spectacular to watch the sun like come folding down over the top of the Duomo at the end of the day. And it's just beautiful. So I'm all about, let's make this big list of experiences, focus on those, and off your list of things that you want to see, we'll throw some of those in. So it's all very experience driven, because that's what you'll remember.
Yeah.
I could show you 10 incredible palazzi and tell you fantastic stories about them and all the history and all everything. And in 2 years' time, you probably won't remember their names, but you will remember what it felt like to sit there and have that glass of wine, or to be walking along the river and see everything happening. Those are the things that you will remember. So I try and really focus on building the experiences.
Yeah. So in terms of the experience, I know that one of my favourite places to go and have a glass of wine in Florence is actually in the Piazza Santa Croce, which I think the light there at sunset is just magical. And do you have a favourite place?
Possibly at the moment, Le Volpe e l'Uva, which is a fabulous little wine bar just across the river, just across the Ponte Vecchio in Oltrano. And what I love about it there is that they have an ever-changing variety of wines by the glass. Because I'm not really that much of a drinker, so I'm not buying bottles everywhere if I have a glass of wine. But also, the people that work there are really into it, and they're really into the stories with everything. So when you're saying to them, oh, I'd like to have a white wine or a red wine, or something local, and you can get them talking, and they'll start talking to you about this little boutique winery, and these vines grew on the hill that gets this sun, and so they taste very different from the wines that grow on that side of the hill, and they get right in story with you. I'm always all about the story, but then you can ask them, what snacks should they have with that? What recommend to have with this particular wine, and they'll choose for you things that go perfectly there. And so this whole thing becomes this big rounded experience. So I love going and doing things like that. I also love timing it so that I can be up high somewhere for sunset and just a beautiful view with a glass of wine and watch, the whole thing. That's always another thing.
Yeah, but you have to the timing is very important though, isn't it? Because if you want to go to some of these amazing rooftop bars, unfortunately they do close in October. So you need to be going there, I think, between May and October, I think, to get onto some of these beautiful rooftop bars.
Maybe go up high somewhere and have a drink somewhere else.
That's a good idea.
I'll often go up to Piazzale Michelangelo just because it's such a spectacular view. So I normally, at least once every time I'm in Florence, will go up there just to be there and breathe the air and watch the sunset happening. So,
yeah, it's gorgeous. And if you walk through that neighbourhood, the San Nicolo neighbourhood, and it's quite a nice place to go for a meal down there as well. But it's a little bit of a trek up that hill unless you take a taxi.
Oh my gosh, it's such a trek. And I'm so not like one of these fitness chicks that goes jogging up hills.
Well, I have to tell you, you might enjoy this. I don't know how much of a gelato person you are, Corinna, but I am a big gelato person. And a few visits ago when we were there, they were having the finale of the Gelato Festival, the World Gelato Championships at Piazzale Michelangelo. And, yeah, that was pretty good, I'm going to say.
Oh, my gosh. So one of the things I do on my tours, and I always tell people about it, is that we have this rule that you only ever eat artisan gelato when you're with me. You never go to any of the chain stores. It's always these artisan, made on site places, which is what you would have been having at the. There's no comparison.
No. No, you don't want as much as these ones where you'll see them, everyone, when you go to Italy, as much as you might like to, and you might be attracted by the mounds of gelato with lots of different multicoloured, don't go there. If you can see the gelato, it's basically a good general law. If you can see it, don't go there. It has to be
exactly
inside the tub, a stainless steel tub with the lid on.
Mm-hmm. And then real artisan gelato or made by hand gelato is not going to have any bright colours at all, and it doesn't fluff. It stays nice and flat. And the difference in the taste is unbelievable. And then I'm also a huge believer in supporting artisans. And luckily enough, artisan gelato is supporting the craft as well as supporting your taste buds. But there's just no... And once you've had real artisan gelato, there's no turning back. You can't ever.
No. Did you have a favourite one in Florence?
Oh, I have a few actually. I love no, and I love over at the Ponte Caraya, so down just past Santa Spirito. They have a fabulous gelateria, and there's always a line of locals. So it's always good because you can just say to local, is there an artisan gelato shop nearby? And it's always going to be one within a block or two. Or I have found you can even type into your cell phone artisan gelato near me, and there'll be one within a couple of blocks.
Yeah, you can do that. I think I know that gelateria that you mentioned. Is it Sprino? Because I went there about this time last year. I'm still thinking about the salted caramel one I had.
I go crazy for all the ones that have oddball flavors that we don't get here in the States, like putting lavender or basil or sage or like anything that seems a little odd to be in ice cream or that you don't normally see in ice cream here. In gelato there, I'll buy it 100 times over.
That sounds delicious. White peach and
pistachio. I'm like always hopeless with pistachio as well. I just love it so much.
That's my husband's favourite. He always gets it. So, like I always know that he's going to get it. So I don't order it because I have to taste. He's very handy for some things.
I had one time, this is like completely off the side here, but one time when I was down in Sorrento and I couldn't figure out like what flavors I was going to have, and because they change every day what they have, so it's not like you going into like Baskin Robbins 31 flavors that are the same flavors every day. And I was humming and hawing, and I came down to, I can't even remember what two they were, and I was going to have these two flavors in a cup, and the guy was like, I will not do that. He's like, I will not do that. You cannot make me do that. And he just didn't want me putting the two flavors together. So, so I said to him, well, you can give me one and put something that you like with it, and I'll come back tomorrow and have the other one, or we can do two separate cups. And he hummed and he hawed and he threw his hands up in the air a little bit and walked up and down, and he was like, I will let you have two separate cups, but don't eat them at the same time. And the whole thing was so hysterical.
I do love that passion for it though, because, and they've been testing it out for very many generations. So they know what's going to work on your palate and they know what's going to be good. And, why not have two gelatos? That's what I say.
Yes. Oh, exactly. It's half the fun of it. But, Florence, of course, is famous for its gelato. So.
Absolutely. But it's also famous for its artisans. And you mentioned that, and I think that's one of the things that's carried through from its history and obviously the place where it's a birthplace of the Renaissance. And you've got, this tradition of artisans throughout the city, and you can find them in many different places and many different shops. And did you have some favourite kind of places where you go to see these artisan wares?
Yeah, well, so you have the main streets have all your high street shops on it, but you dip back a block or two and you can find all kinds of boutiques for everything under the sun, where it tends to be very much artisan work. So in the Oltrano, you find tons of them. And I love, one of my favorite things when I have downtime in Florence is I'll just go over to the Oltrano and just wander, like turn corners because they're there. And then I stumble across incredible craftspeople and these little shops, and they're in there working behind their workbench making fantastic jewelry or shoes. Or I found one that has all these little wooden, and it's just, I love that concept of keeping the art form alive and keeping it going.
Yeah.
And then there's one called Saskia. Saskia makes handmade shoes for men, and she has this clientele that's it's all like royals and all these supersonic people from around the world, and she won't ever let anybody know. Like, most people, they put pictures up with all the different celebrities that they sell to. She'll never let you know who she sells to. But for men who are into bespoke shoes, she makes it's called a last, which is a shape of their foot. And then it takes 6 months to make the shoe. And when you go to visit her and you can see her workroom, and she explains it all and shows these fantastic old tools that she's been working with for forever. And then the shoes, the displayed shoes, she has them suspended from the wall. So it's like they're dancing across the wall. It's fantastic. And, I look at things like that and think, man, it's just so great to have true craftspeople still around.
Yeah, absolutely. There's amazing jewelers in Florence as well. There's one, I don't know if you know this one, Alessandro Dari. It's almost like a museum in there. It blows my mind every time I go there. But they just do have this tradition of the art and the artisanship, and I just find that longevity of it so fascinating. It really is part of the reason why I love to visit Florence, actually, because they have that tradition so strongly.
And I'm a big believer in supporting artisans. So I figure, the high street shops, they don't need your business. Like they've got chains all over the place. But the artisans do, the craftsmen that make handmade shoes and that make handmade jewelry, and then all the embroidery, and whatever it is that you're interested in, there's artisans there making it. So I think it's really important to support them and support their business.
Absolutely. And, it's when you go into their shop, it's not just about the wares, which a lot of care and attention goes into, but it's also about how when you enter the shop, how you're greeted, right? The whole shopping experience is not like what you have at home. I love that too, buongiorno, and then...
And I love that, Italians are so gregarious. You can really very easily draw them into conversation, and they love telling you the stories. So I'm always asking, stories. So, well, how long have you been doing this, and how did you get started? And then it all rolls out about the generations of family who've been doing this. And then they get so excited to tell their story and to show you things and to show you this next part, and see this here. My father made this, and see this. This was three greats, great grandfather. And I love all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, there's one place Corinna and I have both love, and it's probably not surprising given that her background as a makeup artist, but there's one place that you can go, which I'll get Corinna to tell you about this because it's one of my favourite places. But it's the Santa Maria Novella Pharmacy, and it's got an amazing history.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it started off when the monks came. They were in charge of, they had these gardens there at Santa Maria Novella, and they used those to make all the salves and the medicines that they had. And the pharmacy was where that building was where they made them. But they invented, when the plague was there, this antiseptic rose water that you could sprinkle around your house to, keep the fleas and things away, which, was quite fantastic. It was the first to do it. And then when Catherine de' Medici was getting married to Francis, who would become, Henry, who became Henry de Valois, who became the King of France, the monks made this special fragrance for her. And up until that time, fragrances had been suspended in oil, so they would go rancid relatively quickly. So the monks decided to suspend it in alcohol, which is when perfume, like as we know it now, fragrances are suspended in alcohol. That was when it all began. So she had this fantastic fragrance, and you can still buy that fragrance now, which is kind of exciting.
It is. And I have it. I've actually got it, the bottle right here with me because I just love it. I was like, I have to get that perfume.
Well, one of the funny things, I got a funny story with that. And I had been to the pharmacia many times, and I'd smelt it, all the rest of it, and all the things in there. But I loved going there, but it never really resonated with me. And then I had somebody kept saying to me, "You have to watch this TV show called Rain." And I was like, "Oh gosh, it's not my thing." And it's about Mary, Queen of Scots, and I really wasn't interested. But she kept bugging me. So in the end, I thought, I'll just watch one episode, and then I can say it's not my thing. And of course, I was totally got right into it and was binge watching it. But one of the main characters is Catherine de Medici. And I'm like, oh. And she was like ruthless and calculating and shrewd. And she was like one of the best characters on this TV show. And so I kept watching the show because she was so interesting. Well, then when I got back to Florence and I went in there and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Catherine de Medici's fragrance. And I covered myself in it. And I bought everything, and I bought the candles, and I bought because of this silly TV show. I do like with my my tour travelers, and when people are talking to me about going there, I'm always like, watch the Medici show and watch this show, because when you get like caught up in these characters, it changes how you see things. Now that perfume has smelt the same for 500 years. Nothing changed other than I suddenly could identify with how they portrayed, anyway, Catherine de Medici. But now I can't do any more research on her, because if she's not like they said she was in the show, then I'll lose half the magic of the fragrance.
Yeah, there is a bit of a dramatization. I haven't seen that one, but the Medici series, there's two actually. One's a bit more faithful to real life, and one's a bit more takes a bit more poetic license. But I mean, yeah, who cares? It's all good,
Well, because at the end of the day, for most people, if you're not a historian, if you're not an art historian, if you're just a regular person, it doesn't matter if they've taken, if they've gone a little bit sideways with what actually really happened in history, because it just binds you into the characters. And I find with my tour groups, 100% of the time, if they've watched the Medici show on Netflix, they lose their minds at like everything I show them in Florence. They just go berserk, because they're identifying Lorenzo and Cosimo, and I can tell a story about Cosimo the Elder, so Cosimo de Medici, and they'll hang on to every word because they're attaching it to this character that they saw in a show. Whereas those that haven't watched the show, unless they have a huge interest in the Medici, I might as well be talking about Bob Smith half the time. It really doesn't make that much of a difference.
It's really worth doing that pre-investigation, isn't it? And I think the TV show does make it really accessible. I think if you hadn't studied it at school, or you didn't get that, that inspiration from where I got it, yeah, definitely go watch the movies and the TV series, because it will get you hooked, and you'll learn about the characters of the city, because there's so many of them, isn't there?
There is. And then the other thing too is if you've watched lots of movies set in the places that you're going, and you've read books that are set there, and you've watched these TV shows and things, when you see a lot of these different landmarks, it just resonates differently with you. And you're like, oh my gosh. Like I take people to the Medici Palace, and those who've watched the TV show just go to pieces, because that's where so much of it took place, and they're running around taking photos and just absolutely losing their minds, like touching the walls and everything. They're so excited. I love doing that, and I love leading up to trips, or even when you're researching trips, to be taking in every kind of stimulus you can, every kind of piece of research that you can. It fleshes it all out, and you find things that you wouldn't have necessarily known that you would find interesting, or find things that you wouldn't have known that you wanted to see, and it makes it really fun.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think with Florence, everyone is going to see the Duomo, the Uffizi Gallery, and the Ponte Vecchio, but there's so many different little places that you can go to get an even richer perspective of the city. And one of the places I like to go, and I know you do too because I've read your book, is the Palazzo Vecchio, and I just love it. I just love it. I think it's one of those places that sadly people don't go, and you need to go there to understand how powerful this family was, and just how wealthy they were and how influential they were on the city.
Yeah, it's quite hard to wrap your head around quite what they achieved, because they came from, well, not from nothing, but from nothing much. And they, at a time when it was noble families that ruled everything. And these upstarts came in and they created all this wealth, but they also had unbelievable political, shrewdness and cunning, and were able to see a really big picture and forecast out a really long game. So they built this extraordinary wealth, but at the same time, they had this unbelievable love of art. And so they were the most, influential family probably in all of history when it comes to art and liberating artists and letting them paint things that weren't inside the church.
Oh, exactly. That's such a great point, because, up until that time, everything was done for the church, wasn't it? And so you have this huge religious influence on everything, and then they started to have more patronage of more sort of, what's the word? It's not.
They were letting artists create beauty. And then they also had this great ideal that beauty should be for everybody. So it wasn't that everything was locked behind closed doors. They made Florence this really beautiful city. They changed the architecture of Florence. A lot of that comes down to the Medici family and their influence and the things that they did. And so everywhere you turn, it's them. And I find that fascinating. But the Palazzo Vecchio, one of my favorite things to do, and I'm so geeky because I get into these crazes where I love doing things, and I'll do it over and over and over and over again because it's just so fun. But they have this tour that you can go on at the Palazzo Vecchio called the Secret Passages Tour. And I don't think too many people know about it because I can just walk in with a group and get straight on it. But it takes you literally inside the walls of the palace, and the various Medici created these different rooms to store their private art and to store their treasures. And some of them got into sciences and alchemy, and they would have do their experiments and things there. And then they could peep out and watch what the politicians were doing down on the floor, and it was just fantastic. And you can walk all the way through there, and you're with a guide, and they're explaining what you're seeing and showing you all these fantastic things. And then, if anybody's seen the movie Inferno, with Robert Langdon, and I can't remember what the other characters' names are, but a lot of it happens, or a portion of it happens inside the Palazzo Vecchio, and they actually go up into the rafters above the Salon of 500 ceiling. And there's all this chase scene that happens up there. Well, on this tour, they take you up there. And so you get to see, they don't take you up because of the movie, they were doing it long before the movie came out. But you get to see how clever it was that they had this one hoist system that lifts up the ceiling because it's so heavy, and another one that holds the roof down, and all this treated wood that's been there for 500 years, and it's all there working and doing its thing. It's fantastic being up there seeing it.
It's amazing.
It empties you out into the Medici apartments because they lived there for a time when they were running Florence, and so you get to walk through and see where they lived and how they lived, and walk out in their balconies and see what they saw. It's wonderful.
They had some pretty good views. Of course.
And depending on the weather, you can actually go up the tower as well, which I always think in Florence, if you're going to go up high, maybe don't go up the Duomo, because the great thing to see when you're up high is to look out at the Duomo. So I will go up the tower instead at Palazzo Vecchio, and you get up there and there's the cells where, Cosimo de' Medici was kept prisoner, and Ronaldo degli Albizzi and Savonarola. They were the prison cells that were kept up in this tower. But you can walk out, and now you've got this view right out across Florence, and you can look kind of right at the Duomo from up high. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a hot tip, everyone. And it's much easier to get into, isn't it, than the Duomo?
Much easier. You get vastly fewer people, and it's got half the stairs. So it's like win-win-win. But another cool thing for your listeners is if you do go up the tower and you get to walk out on the kind of the outside part of the tower, you'll look on the ground and you'll see glass bricks. And when you get to the first set of glass bricks, stand over them and look down, and you actually look down on the head of David. So they had the replica David that's outside the Palazzo Vecchio, which is where the original David actually originally was, but he got put safely away at the Accademia.
Yeah.
But you can stand up there and look down on David's head, and it's just the craziest sensation. And you have a whole different, well, obviously have a different perspective visually, but you have a different perspective on the creation of him as well.
Yeah, wow. I did not know that. I'm going to look for the glass brick now. I'll be off there for sure. Yeah, the Medici it's impossible to overestimate the importance that they have in the city, is it? Did you have a favourite Medici?
Well, I've kind of got a few. So I love with the Medici, they get really confusing because they kept recycling the same names over. But the original Cosimo, who they now refer to as Cosimo the Elder, he was so brilliant and such a fascinating character. And without him, none of it would have happened. So I'm really fascinated with him. And then, of course, Lorenzo the Magnificent, because of all the art that he's responsible for. But then another one of my favorites is Ferdinando. So when they ran out of the original Cosimo line, the last one, which there's all kinds of interesting stories in there, they desperately needed a new Medici. And so they went to his brother Lorenzo down his line, and there was a young Cosimo. So he was brought over, and they made him run things from when he was 17 years old. And he had, and he's a fascinating character too. But he had all these children, and the first couple died, and then there was Francesco, who got to take over from, they call him Cosimo the First. So Francesco, and then there was the brother Ferdinando. Now, Ferdinando was fascinating. He's so interesting. Apart from the fact that he murdered Francesco, Francesco kind of needed to go anyway. But there's this whole story, and he's this bad guy, but he's a good guy, and he's a bit of a despot, but he rules really well, and everybody loves him, and he's intriguing. And there's a big statue of him in one of my favorite piazzas, which is another one that your listeners need to know about. But Ferdinando's on his horse welcoming you into this piazza, and he's just so fantastic. And if you read up on him a little bit and find out about him, suddenly seeing the statue is like, oh my gosh, he's fantastic. And you get really excited. Oh. But so where the Duomo is, Piazza del Duomo, when you're there, it's so full of people because all the tour buses and all the cruise ships and all the everybody is there, and there's always this big long line of people waiting to get inside the Duomo. But if you walk along to the back end of the end where the actual dome is, keep walking back there, just follow the line of people, and then you'll see this little narrow street. And it's only 500 meters long. It's only 2 blocks long, and you walk along that. And it takes you to the Piazza Santissima Annunziata, which is this fantastic Renaissance piazza. And there'll be 1 billion people 500 meters behind you inside this at the Duomo. And there'll be next to nobody at this beautiful piazza. And it has so much. I mean, it has Fernando welcoming you there on his horse, although he's not actually doing welcoming. I think he's just being masterful. There's there's all kinds of fantastic stories that happen inside this piazza. There's an incredible church, which is well worth going to have a little look in. There's incredible artwork. There's Brunelleschi's first architecture job was creating the front of the Hospital of the Innocents. So it's like an orphanage, which is on one side. And then a couple of hundred years later, they matched all the other sides to make it look like that. There's a ghost story in there. There's just so much. It's a museum that is, I think, fantastic. And you can go and see Botticelli and Ghirlandaio and everybody, and there's nobody there. And it's just been refurbished. So it's, the lighting and the spacing and everything is beautiful. And then you can go up there and have a coffee up in their cafe, and you're looking right at the Duomo, and there's nobody around you. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's just stunning, and it's really worth building in time, even if you haven't been to Florence before. And of course, you want to go and see the main Duomo and the main Uffizi, all of those things that are so famous for a reason. But yeah, just definitely go and have these little adventures off the side, right? Because you won't ever regret it, I don't think.
And the thing is that Florence is actually really, really small. And if you use, say, the Duomo as your center point, really going, the furthest you're going to go is 20 minutes walk from there. There's just so much to see inside of there. So if you're ducking down little, streets and going, oh, I wonder what's down here, you're going to find something amazing. And you'll find the tourists are gone too, because they all stay in these main areas.
Yeah, it's true, and they sort of congregate. Most people kind of congregate between the Uffizi and the Duomo and the Ponte Vecchio, and as Corinna's already mentioned, quite a few places that are literally meters, just steps from those places where you can feel like you're in a whole nother world. Like they're very small and more neighborhoodly, and you're going to get a totally different vibe of the city. Because I have to say, when did I go? September a few years ago, and it was very busy, and I can see how people could be frustrated and a little bit disappointed if they just stuck to the main areas. But if you go, you take a little detour, you'll be much better off.
Well, I think the Duomo is one of the most beautiful buildings in the world. So I find ways to go past it a million times a day. I just love it. But I seldom go inside of it because inside, I think that Florence has so many devastatingly spectacular churches. If you're going to go inside one, we're going to go inside a couple. There's others to go see. Personally, that's what I think. And I don't believe in line for virtually anything because for most people, when you go to Florence, or you're on your trip to Italy, it's something that you saved up a really long time for, and you've got this box of time. You've got a couple of weeks or however long you're there. So if you're in Florence, you've got a day, a couple of days, 3 days, 4 days, whatever. There's just so much to see. There's no reason to start blowing out your time by standing in long lines to get into overcrowded things. So I always recommend people go, if you want to see inside a church, perhaps go inside the Basilica Santa Croce, which I think is just spectacular. Santissima Annunziata is incredible, and that's just right there, right beside the Duomo. It'll take you all of maybe 4 minutes to walk to it, but you're in a whole different world.
You can get a gelato; it'll be fine.
Oh yeah, it's only like 2 minutes. You can go in and see all this incredible stuff and have a gelato, and your friends are still in line at the other.
You'd be like, "What have you been doing?"
But there's so many incredible churches, and I always try and encourage people to, even if you may not think that you're interested in churches or church art, but it's well worthwhile going inside and seeing some, because this is a fantastic way to trace the history of Florence and to understand the people of Florence, because the art the frescoes are unbelievable. But apart from that, they painted everything in the wardrobing of today. So whenever it was they were painting this fresco, they are using the colors of clothing that were worn then, and the hairstyles that were worn then, and the clothing styles that were worn then. So even if it's a religious scene, they're not actually painting it in Jesus's time. They're painting it in, today,
Yeah.
whichever day it was that they were making it. And so you can really get a fascinating look at the people of Florence and what was going on and what it must have looked like to walk through these streets in 1377 or in 1429 or in 1555. You see how these different how the clothes change, the perception of beauty. They'll normally put in the faces of the patrons that whoever owned this chapel inside the church and was paying for the artwork. They're going to be in there, and some of their friends will be in there, and the artists would paint themselves and their friends into the story as well. And so when you know like some different things to look for, it's fascinating.
Absolutely. And I think, Corinna and I have a very strong affinity with the Medici, but there's so many geniuses that came from Florence. And what you mentioned Santa Croce, and that's a great place to go because a lot of them are actually interred there as kind of like the genius mausoleum almost, isn't it? But
I'm always amazed at how did this one place that's not even that big. And if you stand on the hill and you look at Florence, you'll see it's not a big city by any means. How did it just create so many absolute geniuses, like brilliant artists, brilliant musicians, brilliant scientists? I mean, Galileo was there. It's just the best of everything. Like, what was in the water back then?
I don't know. Corinna, you've spent a lot of time in Florence and you've seen all these sites, but I really want to know if just imagine you had one spare day just to do anything you wanted in Florence. What would you do? How would you spend a day in Florence?
Well, I always like getting up early when I'm in Florence. Not every day, but at least one day. I'll get up and I'll go hit the streets at like 7:30 in the morning because there's nobody there yet. And I love to go and do a nice walk through the Piazza del Duomo. I'll go up, walk up to the Piazza della Signoria and see all the incredible statues and everything that are in there in the loggia. And I'll walk through where the Uffizi is, and there's more statues the whole way through there, and then out and across the Ponte Vecchio. And getting to do it before the tour buses come, you have a whole different perspective. And all those statues are there for you and you alone because nobody else, there'll be maybe a handful of people, but you can really see them and walk around them and experience them and look at everything and really see how magnificent and beautiful this city is before, it gets flooded with people. So I'll do that. I normally, once I cross the Ponte Vecchio, and crossing the Ponte Vecchio before all the shops open is wonderful too, because they have all the old shutter-style doors with the big old padlocks and everything. So you don't get to experience that once they're open. And then by nighttime, there's still just too many people around. So I love seeing all of that. And then I like to go across into the Oltrarno, which is an incredible, incredible neighborhood to wander around. It's that whole other side of the Arno. And I'll always stop and have a cappuccino and a slice of pan forte. That's what I like to have for breakfast when I'm in Florence. And you walk so much that the calories don't count anyway.
Of course not. Calories are like half the price in Italy, I'd say.
Well, you can eat all this stuff and you come home like you haven't gained an ounce because you've done all this walking.
And it's very good food too. It's like your body's just going, oh, this is nice. I like it.
Yeah. And so I love eating pan forte. It's just the best thing ever. And for those of you that don't know, pan forte is this kind of spicy cake that's got only enough flour to hold it together, and it's got dried fruits and dried nuts and things, and lots of spices and ginger and honey, and then just enough flour to hold it together. And they actually used to make it for the nuns. It's from Siena, and or the Siena area. But now it's you find it everywhere, and I always have it when I'm in Florence. But I would also go and walk through at least a couple of churches. And once you've seen inside some of them and see how spectacular they are, it becomes quite interesting going through and walking and having a look. And most of them will have next to nobody in them. So one of my favorites is Ognissanti, which is over by the Santa Maria Novella area. And I mean, it's staggering. it really takes your breath away, and there'll be almost nobody there. And in fact, last summer I'd been there, and I walked out into the cloisters in the back, and I'd been waking. I always wake my mom up because she's like 12 hours difference, and she's in New Zealand, and I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, you won't even believe this, and there's nobody here," and it's so incredible. But she loves art, so she gets it. She thinks it's worthwhile waiting up for. But so last summer I'd come out and I was in the cloisters, and I just couldn't believe that here I was seeing all these unbelievable frescoes, and they date back to the 1300s, and there was like basically nobody there. And then I looked over and I saw this woman standing there with her cell phone, and she was crying. And I thought, oh no, maybe she's lost or something, something's gone wrong. So I went over to help her, and she was crying because she couldn't believe that she was getting to see this, and there's only the two of us out there. And Florence was bursting at the seams with tourists at the time.
Yeah.
So there's lots and lots of places like that where you can go and you have this unbelievable experience, and you see all these incredible things, and there's nobody much else there looking at them because they're all standing in the Piazza del Duomo or waiting in line to get into the Accademia.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's definitely worth going for a wander and an explore. Much like in A Room with a View. I don't know if you've read that book. I'm pretty sure you have or seen the movie. But yeah, she goes off without her Baedeker, which is her guidebook, and she goes exploring. And I think it's one of those things that gets my little pulse racing every time I see that movie.
absolutely. And I love wandering. So I love wandering in the Oltrano, and I love wandering in that whole area around Santa Maria Novella. So not the train station part of it, but between the church and the river, there's just all these little side streets, and they have fantastic little eateries and interesting shops to look at, and very few tourists. So you can walk down these streets and get a feeling of being in Florence rather than the tourist experience.
Even in summer. Even in summer.
Even when it's just been packed to bursting. When I have my tour groups there, we just like divert, and I take them, and they don't know that I'm like taking them away from the tourists. They're just like, oh my gosh, look at this, it's amazing, and looking at all these beautiful streets and the tabernacles, the little the little artworks that are built into the buildings, and then the wine windows, seeing those, and all these fantastic things that you miss if you just stick to the main areas.
So if you haven't heard about the wine windows, maybe, Corinna, you can tell people a bit about the wine windows, because this is actually one of my favourite things about Florence. I think it's highly civilised. Highly.
It's brilliant. So basically, they decided that they would allow people to sell wine from their palazzo. So if you had a vineyard out in Tuscany, you didn't really have somewhere to sell your wine. So they made these little wine windows on the side of a palazzo, and you'd have your servants in there, and somebody could come up and knock on this little wooden window, and the servant would open it, and then they'd buy a bottle or they'd buy a glass, and so they didn't have to actually come inside your palazzo. The riffraff was staying out in the street, but the servant would run down, grab the wine, and put it back out through the little window. And it's such a cool, quirky, fascinating thing. A lot of them have been closed up because those palazzi have now become hotels or whatever. But there are some that are still functioning.
I know. It's so much fun.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's just a fantastic, quirky thing to know about. And I think there's 150 of them total in Florence. And so once you train your eye to start looking for it, you'll suddenly spot them and be like, oh my gosh, look at this. And then again, you'll see like just a line of people walking right past who have no clue. And then, you get to see this special thing and enjoy it, which I always love that.
Yeah, it's very special. It's one of those unique things. There's so many little nooks and crannies and stories to uncover. You can literally spend a lifetime exploring Florence, I think. It's one of those places. And trust me, I know some people have been disappointed when they go, and it's mainly because they're trying to just hit the highlights of what's expected, not the highlights, what's going to be a highlight for them. And so I know Corinna feels very strongly about that.
Yeah, I think that most guidebooks just send you to the places that the tour buses all go. So, and people don't necessarily know to go, walk down some of these different streets, or that there's all these other things. You think, well, what do you see in Florence? It's this handful of things. And if that's all you're going to see, then you can have, I think, a slightly disappointing or overwhelming experience because it's just all with the crowds. But if you can do a little research, and you'll find that everything is really right there. It's incredible. Like another one that always strikes me as being it's so fascinating is San Michele, which is a church that you wouldn't know it's a church because it's square. It used to be a granary, and it's on that main drag when you're walking down to the Ponte Vecchio. So there'll be just a steady stream of walking tours going past, and just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, but nobody goes inside. So you go inside, and this place is just amazing, and it has an incredible story behind it, and all these quirky, funny things to look for and seek out, and it gets quite exciting when you see all of those things, and you're right in the heart of everything. So you don't actually have to get off the beaten track to be off the beaten track in Florence.
Absolutely. Now, everyone, if you want to uncover some more of these places like Corinna has shared with us, the best thing to do is get Corinna's book on Florence, but I'll also ask her to share with you how you can stay in touch with her, because as you can see, she's got so much knowledge and so much passion for Florence and Italy.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely love it. So I have a website, which is CorinnaCooke.com. And I have a link to my blog on the website, but I've been blogging at Corinna B's World for years and years and years and years. It's pretty much all just about traveling in Italy. And I have tons of things on Florence, just interesting bits and pieces to do. And then actually on Pinterest, unfortunately, I got my Pinterest boards and everything going years ago when everything was about makeup. So it's called Corinna Makeup. Is my Pinterest tag, where it should be something fabulous like Glam Italia or something. But my Pinterest boards now are all just Italy. But you can go, for example, to Tuscany board, and it just has endless things to do in Tuscany and in Florence. And every pin, if you click on it, it'll take you into the corresponding blog post. So it makes it really easy to be able to see a picture of something and then go in and see that thing rather than trying to do all this Googling.
I'm actually a big fan of Pinterest for travel. I haven't actually met anyone else who is, but yeah, it's a good tip. I do like Pinterest for researching travel. It's an excellent tip there. Thanks, Corinna.
I think it's actually one of the greatest tools for researching travel. And you can like plot out the places that you're going, and then go on Pinterest and type, for example, interesting things to do in Florence, unusual things to do in Florence. And you're going to come up with all these things that's mostly travel bloggers who I think have a very interesting perspective. And you'll get some things that is telling you to go to all the things you've always heard of, but you can find absolutely amazing things to see and do that you'd never heard of before. Or, type in gelato in Florence, and there'll be all these people popping up with the 10 best places, to have artisan gelato in Florence. There's just so much information there. And then you can build boards where, when you're on Pinterest finding all these things, you can save them to your Florence board. And so then when you're there, or when you're in that last part of planning your trip, you've got all this great information condensed into this one place, and it's got pictures to remind you. Because when you just see a bunch of words about something that you can't quite remember what it was, but it was interesting to you 6 months ago, it's not quite the same as seeing a picture of that thing and 10 reasons why you need to go here. It really drills it down for you.
Absolutely. What a wonderful tip. Okay, listeners, if you like a fun and fresh approach to Italian history and art, and of course eating, drinking and shopping, then really I very much encourage you to seek out Corinna's Glam Guides. They are full of the amazing insights she shared with us today. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, they were a really big inspiration for this podcast. So it's absolutely a thrill to have Corinna on the show. And I'm sure that if you have the opportunity to join one of her tours, you'll be talking fondly about it for years to come. Grazie, Corinna. It's been an absolute absolute pleasure talking to you on Untold Italy today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I've loved it.
So who wants to hunt down those wine windows and spritz perfume made for a queen with Corinna? I know I do. What fun! And that's exactly what travel should be all about, don't you think? Uncovering those things that bring you joy and put a smile on your face when you think of them many, many years after. Corinna's books regularly hit the bestseller lists and you'll find them on Amazon and all major bookstores. I put all her details and links to her books into the show notes at untolditaly.com/49 for episode 49. Now, Corinna has 11 books planned in total. 11! So exciting. So no doubt you'll be hearing her voice on the podcast again very soon. I certainly hope so. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you gave it a rating or a review in your favourite podcast app. It really does bring a smile to our faces to know that you enjoy the show. That's all for this week. Next week, it's our 50th episode and I couldn't be more excited. Stay tuned for some more exciting glimpses of Italy and a giveaway, but more on that next time. Ciao for now.